feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun. Open wide for some soccer.
I don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the Cowboys.
Call this college rule. Open wide for some soccer. The Springfield Continental Soccer Association is back, where we will determine who will be the greatest country in the world, Mexico or Portugal.
Welcome, everybody. We're the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm Chris. This is Dom. Obviously, we're talking soccer today. Real quick, please give our YouTube a subscribe, maybe a like, maybe a little comment. Follow us on Instagram at the Sports Experience Podcast, and please enjoy our other episodes.
We desperately need your love and support.
This
honestly.
is true.
But this is a great podcast, and you're getting in on the ground floor. It's not one of those pyramid schemes. We're taking this to the top.
It's a funnel.
It's a funnel.
Oh, shit. All right, let's get into it. Today's episode is about Ronaldinho.
Another one of those sexy Brazilian McLovins, who's a great soccer player. I was excited to research him. You want to start off here, Chris?
Yeah,
All
man.
right.
Let's get it.
Born March 21st, 1980, in Porto Alegre, over there in Brazil.
Yes. Grew up pretty poor, and then early on, his brother became a professional soccer player.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. Yeah, his brother, I believe, was with the Grêmio team or whatever.
Yeah,
And,
his brother Roberto
Inho. No.
And I thought it was kind of interesting. They went from being kind of a lower middle class family, and then he ended up buying them what would be a really nice house in a really nice neighborhood. And his dad, at Ronaldinho, at the age of 8, his dad actually drowned in the pool that they bought this house for him, which is just sad. And then
Should have stayed poor.
Yeah.
No pool, no death.
Wouldn't have had that pool.
Exactly. Damn water. It's like Adam West stabbing the ocean day after all those people drowned.
Oh, damn water.
All right. But much like his brother, he was a very good soccer player growing up and played the futsal that I think we talked about in the Zico episode.
Yeah. So he grew up and was praised for his skill like he is for the rest of his career. The futsal is it's a smaller, harder ball, and it's like a 5-on-5 or a 6-on-6, and it's more concentrated on like ball control and like skill than necessarily like formation tactics like a bigger game is. So it's like an indoor kind of soccer game, and a lot of Brazilians actually say that this is the reason why their ball control is so much better across the board than a lot of other countries.
What was it? The Robin Williams, like, oh, I'm scoring. Now I'm kicking the ball.
Yes, exactly.
I saw an interesting story at age 13, playing on one of the teams. He scored all 23 goals in a 23-0 win.
So he was, and this was, so let's get into his real name is Ronaldo.
Yeah.
They changed it, and technically Ronaldinho is his nickname because he was, I think Enyo means the little one or small one or something like that. So it was Ronaldo, the small one, because he was always playing like 2 or 3 years above that. So like that instance
Small little Ronaldo.
Yes, where he scored 23 goals, he did it against kids who are like 2 years older than him.
They're like,
just to put it in perspective as to how good. So like he was always in like these Brazilian youth squads. He was always like looked at as like, oh, this is going to be one of our huge stars.
Yeah, and he's doing it without fur on his peaches. It's not like he's Eric Lindros where he's playing 2 years ahead because he's also bigger than the 2 years older kids.
No,
he's
yeah.
very tiny but very nimble.
Yes.
But makes the 1997, the Under-17 World Cup in Egypt. Scores 2. That's kind of his first international kind of breakout performance, right?
I think he was the first player to actually go through all of the youth. So he played in like youth 17, 19, 23. A lot of the times they'll like skip those, and I think he played in every single one. He was the first Brazilian to ever do that.
Take that, Pele.
Yeah. So I'm just saying he was definitely sought after as like this next big star. And you're right. This is when everybody was just like, oh, he can play on this next level.
Yeah. the little Ronaldo. His coach on the Gremio youth team said he was a cut above the rest. So that's some pretty impressive words. 1998, 1999, he had 22 goals in 47 matches for them. Which is
So this is where he really came into the Brazilian league, where they let him kind of like become the player because he was 18.
Yeah.
He was going on 19. And,
hard 19.
And he exploded on this Brazilian league. And I think one of the probably defining moments of his career was he was going up against Dunga, who was the captain of the 94 World Cup team. And he ended up flicking the ball over his head.
Oh, yeah.
And people are saying, like, how could you do that to the captain? How could he do that to our,
national hero?
And they were saying, like, because he was essentially the best defender at one time in Brazil, and they were just like, oh, here's the passing of the torch. It was one of these situations where you're like, man, this kid is going to be everything.
Amazing, because he had all the natural ability, like, in the world. And we'll get into kind of later in his career what happens. But this was a guy that just had everything, physically.
And what they were saying was he would play the game with such joy, and like shit like that where maybe somebody wouldn't do like a flick over. Like he was just like, no, we're here to have some fun. We're here to, because if you ever watch him play, he would play with this huge smile on his face all the time.
Stodgy old white people going, you can't celebrate.
So this is the summer because he did so ridiculously well for this team in the Brazilian league that all of the European teams come in and they're like, oh, we need to sign this guy up.
Yeah.
So Arsenal tries to sign him. They can't get him for a work permit, which is kind of common back then, where it was harder to get South Americans in for work permits. And then a little foreshadowing,
Yes.
A Scottish team tries to St. Mirren.
The St. Helens Mirrens.
Yes, the St. Helens Mirren. St. Mirren tries to actually get him just on a loan, which is kind of common, where a club will get him on a loan and then they can get him for a full work permit. And there was a bit of a fake passport scandal where they tried to. Essentially, they were like, "All right, show us your passport," and he gave him a fake one. So it was kind of
It said McLovin on it.
It was kind of a weird. They were like, it wasn't his name because he was going by this nickname, and there was all this shit that was like, and it's less regulated, if you will.
It's like the fucking bench warmers where he hands him the thing written in crayon, I am 12.
Exactly.
Silencio mijo.
This is you?
Carlos.
So with all of this kind of going on, we see kind of like a delayed transfer, and who ends up picking him up is Paris Saint-Germain and PSG for about $5 million. Now, this is a debated transfer because technically none of that money went to the club, and his club kind of turned on him at this point and said that it was his fault when technically this was like the Lionel Messi.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Where normally South American clubs, like this is like a commodity that they, produce these guys, and they're like, we need to get paid for this, and they kind of let his contracts kind of falter, and as a result, they kind of missed out on money that they felt like they should have gotten.
Well, yeah, these amazing players are what keep these South American teams afloat as far as just like, hey, we'll be able to play the next 5 seasons because we developed this kid, and here comes the money,
Well, it is for some of these clubs. It is a huge cash windfall that they, you know what I mean? Like they felt like they missed out on this huge
for sure
star because everybody could see him being like this next star.
Yeah, it's more or less like send him to Europe, get that money, get that cash money. So August 4th, 2001, he plays in his first game for is it the PSG?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So he really starts doing pretty well for them.
Yeah, he starts off first half of the season. He's trying to get into the flow of the European game. He struggles with a couple of injuries, and then in the second half of the season,
oh man, he turns it on.
He turns it on, but people were saying like right away. So even when he's killing it second half of the season, right away there's problems in the locker room.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And this will plague his entire career. the coach, Luis Fernandez, came out and he was just like, he has too much love for the nightlife, the Parisian nightlife, which is what the Paris kind of like bourgeois nightlife is or whatever. Yes. And he said he had too much love for that and he didn't care enough about soccer or like the training aspect.
He loved the game soccer, but he loved also what came along with it, is what I've been reading.
I'll tell you what. There was a quote by him that he said, "We're talking about practice. We up here talking about practice." And that's literally what his coach was talking about. He was just like, yeah, he shows up for game day, but he's not, he doesn't understand like the structural things that they were trying to do. Like he was just all of a go forward kind of player.
Yeah, almost like Derek Thomas, where it's like doesn't really, necessarily care about practice or putting in the effort, but then on game day you're just like, oh my God, that's amazing.
Yep.
I mean, he's definitely not having or awesome orgies and doing lots of cocaine like Mr. What's his name? Maradona.
Well, it's actually interesting because Maradona was one of his idols growing up, which is super rare for a Brazilian, but to love a Argentine player. But it was so much so that everybody thought Maradona was such a huge player. But they kind of mirror that. It wasn't cocaine. It was more of just like alcohol and club life or whatever you want to call it.
Being out till 3 a.m.
Yes, very much that kind of stuff. And so going into the 2002 World Cup, there's a bit of a PSG is kind of looking to offload him.
Yeah.
Everybody always waits for post World Cup because your stock could falter, but not that much.
Yeah.
If you have a bad World Cup, people will be like, well, look at his club success. This is kind of different, and it will only rise.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt you to wait until afterwards, and especially because Brazil in 2002 is kind of loaded.
Well, this is the thing that was so interesting was going into the World Cup, they weren't necessarily picked as one of the favorites or as like the top 3 favorites because they had a bad qualifying. So everyone was saying like this team looks great on paper, but they're just not putting it together. And they turn out to be one of the best top 3 World Cups, like trios we've ever seen in Ronaldo.
3 Rs.
Yeah, the 3 Rs, Ronaldo, Rivaldo, and the Ronaldinho. And technically it's 2 Ronaldos and a Rivaldo. But
reading TV guide, writing to TV guide, renewing TV guide. God. Sorry.
But this is where in South Korea and Japan that Ronaldinho really puts his stamp onto the world. And everyone's just like, oh, shit. Like, in this trio of attacking, look at Ronaldo's hair from this. It's not Cristiano Ronaldo.
No.
It's a different Ronaldo. One of the greatest hairstyles ever. We're going to do an episode just because of that hair. And because he's probably the greatest out-and-out striker ever.
Makes me so happy, Chris.
Oh, my God. It's amazing. In the group stage, he scores against China just to start it off. But then in probably one of the most epic games in his career is the quarterfinals against England, where Michael Owen scores in the 23rd minute on a defensive mistake. He steals it and just runs it in. Brazil is kind of dominating possession in all of this, and Ronaldinho takes a bad play by the English player in midfield and takes it all the way to the penalty box.
It was incredible.
Passes it to Rivaldo for the fucking... It is one of the best. I'm just saying, like, if you watch this and then... So they tie the game up. 53rd minute, I believe, he gets a free kick. And if you watch this free kick...
Oh, man, yeah.
He just sees that the goalie's off of the line. There's debate whether or not this is miskicked and it's a cross that just goes long.
Yeah.
A lot of people think it's a shot. I think it's a shot because the goalie's off the line, and he just bends this ball into the back of the net. I feel bad for the English goalkeeper, David Seaman. Because he is a world-class goalkeeper, and you can tell this ball just caught him off guard.
Yeah, he wasn't expecting it to do exactly what it did mid-flight. But, yeah, no, they end up winning the game.
They end up winning the game 2-1, beating England. But here's where it's very crazy is 5 minutes after this, I mean, he assists and then he gets this goal. 5 minutes after this, he gets a red card.
Yeah, he's out for, I think, the semifinal game, right? Mm-hmm.
And here's where the detractors start to latch on. And they're like, we had all this momentum. We're going into the semifinals, and he kind of takes it away from us.
He's not disciplined. He hurts the team, that type of nonsense.
Yes.
But they end up winning without him.
Yes, they end up winning without him because Brazil's so damn deep. And then they end up going to the finals and beating Germany 2-0. Mm-hmm. And it kind of cements him as this, because in these games, he is, if you watch these games, he really is the link up between the midfield and the forwards in this trio where the other R's are up front and he's kind of dropping back and going to the left. And it's very interesting when you look back at this team, because everybody looks at this top three as like, oh my God, like we were so lucky to see these three play together. But when they were going into the World Cup, they were kind of looking at it like,
is this gonna work?
Are they gonna? So yeah. His stock rises.
Well, obviously he's 22 years old and he just won the World Cup. I mean,
and it's interesting because PSG is selling him and kind of pointing at it like, yeah, look at that red card.
Yeah.
He's not disciplined. This is why we're getting rid of him. And everybody else is like, did you see everything else?
Yeah. Did you watch any of the World Cup outside of that one moment?
Yep. So let's depart from Ronaldinho story and let's get into Barcelona.
Yes.
So Barcelona's in a huge downswing at this time.
Uh-huh.
They have a new president coming in.
That's right.
Joan Laporta. Mm-hmm. And Laporta says he's going to bring in huge stars and go back to the style of play, the Johan Cruyff style of play that
always keeps coming back.
That had so much success. And Cruyff actually comes in as like a consultant.
Yeah.
So he's like, because he's not like a GM. He's like I would say he'd be like, if you're equating it to American, like assistant GM kind of in player development or whatever you want to call.
Or like executive vice president.
Yes, one of those
made up corporate terms. It's just like, yeah, you could run the show and we're just going to give you a hefty payday.
They bring Frank Rijkaard in, who was essentially a Dutch player to bring in this style of play that they know that they want to play.
Total football.
And the three players that they really wanted, Beckham was leaving Manchester United. Laporta said he was going to pick him up. He ends up going to Real Madrid. And Thierry Henry, who ends up staying at Arsenal. Uh-huh. But then the only huge player on the market now is Ronaldinho. Manchester United are looking to fill that Beckham space.
Yeah.
And Barcelona, who had last season, I think they were like in 6th. So they didn't have European football. They didn't have this stuff that attracts players. And he ends up going to Barcelona.
Yep.
And a lot of people were debating this. So they were saying, because Manchester United was ran by Alex Ferguson at that time.
Oh, Fergalicious.
And it was such a tight ship that they were saying that he wouldn't be able to kind of go out and have like a nightlife.
Oh, interesting.
So there was question about that, whether he was going to Barcelona a la like Maradona.
Yep.
And still kind of party, not like that, but party like kind of in the same vein.
Fun European discotheque partying.
Yes.
Not Roman bacchanal orgy partying.
He chooses Barcelona for $30 million. They end up paying a little bit more, but a lot of people thought that Manchester United was the more established team at this time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it would have been maybe a better team move as far as winning, but I don't know if that fit would have been good.
Yeah, that's the thing, is he kind of revitalizes Barcelona. So we'll get into that. His debut was actually kind of funny. He was coming back from vacation and Barcelona was trying to get them to delay the game for the weekend. Sevilla refused. They're like, no, we don't give a shit about him. So Barcelona started the game at midnight or at like 12:05 because they were forced to play on Wednesday. Yeah, it was pretty silly, but he had a good start. And then kind of like in PSG, he kind of was getting used to the team and all of that. Barcelona has a rough start their first season. Mm-hmm. They're in 12th, and then he comes back from injury and plays like the second or the last 2/3 of the season, scores 15 goals and propels them to second.
Yeah, which is pretty incredible. It's a nice little turnaround for them as far as their organization.
Well, luckily for Laporta, who was pretty much saying this was like the revitalization, like you're not going to see us falter. They were pretty bad in the beginning of the season,
right.
and then everybody kind of, and you see this young Barcelona squad start to come together. So you have like Xavi and all of those players start to
Spain World Cup guys.
Yep,
Right?
start to emerge. The game that everybody hangs their hat on is April 25th, 2004.
Yep.
They end up beating Real Madrid at the Bernabeu, which is their Real Madrid stadium. So Barcelona's away, first time in 7 years. And Xavi literally said this was the start of the Barcelona rise that we all know. And I mean,
that's amazing.
This dynasty that was kind of built, and a lot of people felt like it had to do with the fun and freewheeling soccer that Ronaldinho brought to this team. That was really, that's what like Laporta was saying, was just like, we really have changed our culture here, and we need to get it back to what it was.
You need guys like that, though, in your locker room. I mean, not necessarily the partying, but just somebody to keep everybody loose and everyone, like, keep the chemistry going with all sorts of different personalities. So.
It could switch. That's the only thing with the partying, but you're right. With the looseness, with the fun, and there was a lot of young players coming up, so it was very good. 2004, 2005.
Oh, wow.
Was he good. And this was something that you have to hang your hat on. Was we'll see his decline later, but in his prime, people say that
this guy could play.
He would go up against some of the best players ever. Not necessarily better than, but like he would be probably on the bench of like the all-time best players in his prime. That's the only thing. So 2004, 2005, he's World Player of the Year. They end up losing in the Champions League to Chelsea. Yeah, what's up?
I noticed that during the research.
But there was a time, and check out this goal. That's the other thing. He has some amazing goals. He says about this goal, he was just like, there was a moment where I felt like everybody got paused, like somebody pressed the giant pause button. All the other players just stopped, and I had 3 seconds to just figure out what I was going to do, and he just drips this ball and man, like he had so many goals and just like plays like that you could go through and just be like, God, he was
a highlight reel.
He was
like one of those players, almost like a Vince Carter, when he was in his prime. Just like every night it'd be Sports Center top 10 or the Spanish equivalent of that,
and did a lot like what Vince Carter did, was revitalize or like create this kind of momentum that Barcelona took. Just because he's in the Barcelona zeitgeist. I mean, May 1st, 2005, he assists to Messi's first ever goal.
I saw that.
So, I mean, that's
amazing.
just, one of those things. Messi said he was one of the big influences for him, just to, on that senior level, to see him and attacking from the left and being that player that was the star before Messi was.
Oh yeah, they're almost not necessarily passing of the torch, but like, wow, this guy is really good. I'm excited to play with him.
Exactly. Yes. That summer, Barcelona actually offer him a 9-year, $85 million contract, which was fucking huge then.
Oh yeah, totally.
He ends up turning it down, which a lot of people thought was very weird. It's hard to even know what his thought process was. He did a 2-year extension.
Yeah, I saw that part. That's kind of weird.
It's hard to just know what he was thinking with that. I think he was already looking at the door for Barcelona. Like, he was already kind of like, all right. Even though 2005, 2006 was probably his even better year. But people say from 2004 to 2006, he was without a doubt the best player in the world.
Oh, totally. Yeah, and winning in 2005, 2006 again, FIFA World Player of the Year, inaugural 2005 European Footballer of the Year too.
He won pretty much every individual award. The Ballon d'Or, which is like what it's like the French give out their best, but everybody kind of equates it to like that's like the Player of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
They end up going. And this was actually, I found this pretty interesting. Like I said, Maradona was his idol growing up.
Oh, yeah.
November 19th, he ended up scoring twice against Real Madrid in a 3-0 El Clasico win. And he was actually applauded by the Real Madrid fans, the only other player ever opposing player ever to be applauded was Maradona.
I know that
For
was so
their
cool.
skill. That's the
Yeah.
thing, was they recognize it and they're just like, no, we get
Grudgingly, like, you son
it. You
of a bitch.
son of a bitch.
How dare you?
Going on to be Champions League winner, first time in I believe 15 years.
Yeah, 14,
beating Arsenal in that one. And in that league, in that year, he had 26 goals. 17 of them were in La Liga, 7
God.
Champions League. So, and he had, this was what people kind of overlook, was he had comparable assist numbers to Samuel Eto'o, who was like their striker, who had like 34 goals. So like he was so integral in every single part of their offense. That's what people were saying, was just like, no, he doesn't track back and play defense, but he's essentially our point guard.
Yeah, he's the fire starter.
Yep.
So you want to get into World Cup then?
Oh, yeah.
Because this is an interesting one,
So
2006.
here we get into the 2006 World Cup, where people say his career kind of shifts.
Yeah, it does. Brazil is looked at, defending World Cup champions. You're thinking, man, Nike had that campaign, I remember, leading into it. This was the German World Cup, actually.
This was the German World Cup, and Ronaldo's still there. Rivaldo is gone. We have Kaká stepping in, who I'll talk about later.
I remember him from that, what was it, the match, the AC Milan one,
Yep.
right? Mm-hmm.
Yep,
Yeah.
AC Milan versus Liverpool.
That's right.
Adriano. So they have this like diamond in the front that they're kind of saying is going to work. But if you look at games in which Ronaldinho and Kaká play together, they almost don't really play. They almost play in the same space.
Yeah.
So they are going into this World Cup as favorites. A lot of people are putting a lot of pressure on Ronaldinho to be like a leader, which he's not.
No, and there are just some guys in all sports who are like that. Great teammates, very talented, but they're not in the leadership category.
And
that's just not who they are mentally.
And I feel like the media was throwing this on him, and he just was not into it. And he ends up having a really bad World Cup. The whole team really does have a bad World Cup. They were not on the same page. They weren't firing on any cylinders. They get through the group stage, but you can kind of tell like they were just like all weird offense. So like if they were going up against not the best teams, I think they scored 10 goals in the group stage. But I remember the commentary being like, wait till they come up against a team that can possess the ball. They can't get the fucking ball back. And that's what France did. They ended up beating them 1-0 in the quarters. And it wasn't, I think Brazil got one shot on goal.
Are you serious?
Yes,
That's
like
insane.
They literally locked them down, and that's what they were saying, was just like, no. They're great when they have the ball. They're not getting the ball.
Fast kicking, low scoring, and ties. But yeah, they end up losing to France, so that pretty much dashes their hopes of repeating as champions.
And the criticism falls heavily on Ronaldinho.
Yeah.
You see they felt like he was not at the level he should be.
Yeah.
Especially as a starting forward, but it was a lot of criticism on him, and a lot of people said that he really did not take this criticism well, especially from Brazilian fans.
Exactly.
It really affected his mental state.
Yeah, his mental state and just the narrative of his entire career internationally and for Barcelona and the other teams that he plays for.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
Yeah.
2006, 2007, 21 goals for Barcelona.
Well, I'll say this. Coming back from the World Cup, he's still in perfect form. He's still killing it. This is probably one of his better years. But this is when we get Pep Guardiola coming in as coach. Mm-hmm. And Pep kind of had these statements where it was like his partying is getting out of control. Yeah. So it was almost like he is struggling with depression. And towards the second half of the season, it was just like kind of like, whoa, it was kind of the same thing with PSG, where they were like, he's not focusing whatsoever on
soccer is secondary to him.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Which is unfortunate because he's very good.
Yep. 07, 08, he has a lot of injuries, and he does not play a lot for Barcelona. Mm-hmm. President Juan Laporta came out and he said, literally, he said he might need a new challenge.
Yeah.
It's just the truth of the matter where you can see with some of these guys, they were just like, he doesn't care about shit. Like, it was almost like he would get injured and he's like, he doesn't even care to come back from his injury.
Well, at least he's not smoking a cigarette on the sideline like Jay Cutler.
Well, this is what detractors say about Ronaldinho was he has all the skill in the world, but can't be bothered to be any tactical awareness or anything like that.
He's not going to be your captain,
No,
essentially.
never.
He's going to be the best player on your team and on any team he plays for as far as skill-wise. But, yeah, he's not going to take it that extra mile like a Steven Gerrard.
Yes, no, exactly. Because Gerrard is like a main staple in the middle.
Like, if you stop playing Genesis for karaoke, Ronaldinho will just sit there and pick a new song.
He's not going to flip out.
Yeah.
Steven Gerrard is going to put you in a hospital.
And he's going to get studioed.
So July 8th, he actually turns down a really big money move to Manchester City, who had just been taken over by the old Saudi Arabian, I forget exactly what it is, but the old Middle East state money.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So they just come in and they're literally like, we have all the, like, I think they were offering to pay him something like 20% more than, like, he was going to be the highest paid player ever. He goes to AC Milan for a ton of money, so it's not like it was like, you know. At this time, AC Milan's, because he's always worn number 10, which is kind of like saying, like, hey, he's the best player on the offense. He's that number 10. Is actually worn by Seedorf, so he goes and wears number 80, which is a weird number in soccer. I'm just saying.
I don't think I've ever seen soccer numbers go that high.
You just don't see that. He said it was because he was born in the 1980, and everyone was just kind of like, okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, whatever. Not a great first season, but he was definitely trying to fit in with the Italian game. This is very common where, especially attacking-wise, but we see that he comes into a team, an AC Milan team, that has Kaká in the middle.
Oh, no.
And that's what everyone was saying, was just like they were shifting him out to the left too much. He wasn't coming back and receiving. Like the World Cup winning team, he was very much like the facilitator.
Yeah.
And with Kaká being the facilitator, he was almost kind of in lost space.
Yeah.
So first season, he's not very good. There's talk about struggle with fitness. There's talk about partying too much in France still.
Oh, he's going from Italy to France just to party.
Hey, man.
God, that just sounds... I want that life. Sounds amazing.
Carlo Ancelotti actually said this about him, which I thought was pretty accurate. His physical condition has always been precocious. His talent has never been in question.
And see, that's the thing, is you can get by on natural talent for only so long. Because if you're not, hitting the gym or keeping up with your body, it'll break down.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's just...
And partying and just everything.
Yeah.
All of it, yeah. So we see him actually regain form in 09-10.
Yep.
With Pato, who's a Brazilian on the right. And this is actually really interesting because he's actually the assist leader this year for the Serie A. And a lot of people thought he was going to be in this 2010 Brazilian World Cup team.
That's right.
And a lot of people thought it was going to be Ronaldo still up top, who was old, but was like, this was like his last thing. Pato on the right and Ronaldinho on the left. And ended up being none of them even made the team.
Which is crazy.
The coach of that team, which was Dunga, who got...
the guy that got schooled
who got flipped over. A lot of people... Like, this was not a true story, but they were saying, like, if he only didn't rainbow it over his head,
he would have been on the team.
The truth was he was trying to move away from the classic Brazilian style and trying to get them to play in, like, a different style. Didn't really work out.
I was going to say, no, you don't mess with success, right, Chris?
No.
Like,
I mean, I don't know if Ronaldo should have been his starting striker, but... To leave out Pato and Ronaldinho in this one was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, as far as not starters, but,
Well, they don't win, so, I mean, that says it all right.
Yep. So, coming back 2011, he teams up with Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and they are actually... AC Milan is kicking ass at this time. They don't want, this is the last year of his contract, and they don't want to lose him for free.
Yeah.
So they ended up selling him in the winter, which was really weird. But reports came out that he was just not focused, and you could see his decline in play.
Yeah. There's such a mental aspect to it. There's such a like readiness aspect to it.
Yep.
If you think about it. And that's what's so sad is because he was so awesome.
He was. And what is kind of obvious in this later thing is he needs the team to kind of be structured around him. And when he's not ready to be that number one guy, the entire team kind of falters. So they end up selling him to a Brazilian team. And this is probably the biggest fall from grace that you'll see in a soccer. So like, he literally went
to
from
Flamengo, right?
Yep, he goes to Flamengo. He does okay there, but it's not. It's not the same player.
No,
not the same player at Barcelona. Not the same player 2009-10 AC Milan. It's like you could almost see it as like.
But you see guys in all sports like that is like when that talent isn't there anymore, it's like off a cliff.
It's off a cliff, and it was so. That's the only thing, though, was he was the best in the world. And that's why I think it was so apparent was he was the best in the world to just literally like a middle-of-the-run Brazilian league player.
Yeah.
He ends up quitting Flamengo because he says that they owed him back wages. He ends up suing them. He goes to another Brazilian team. He goes to a Mexican team and plays a couple of years. But you can just see that he's not the player that he was. He ends up going to India and playing futsal.
I saw
Did you see that?
Yeah, that was cool.
They were trying to get a professional futsal league going with like ex-pros and like mainly South Americans because that's who like kind of play that shit. It didn't really take off, but it was kind of a fun idea.
Oh, totally.
And then he was during his time, because this is when the money explosion happened.
Yeah.
He was one of the biggest earners. Like you said, Nike campaign. He was huge in Nike. He had like Coca-Cola sponsorships. When he was playing at Barcelona, he was one of the highest paid players ever. And that's when we get into, because he retires about 2018 from ever playing again. And that's when we get into some of his troubles.
Yeah, let's go into that.
Yeah,
this is kind of interesting.
July 19th. When is it? 2019.
Yeah, July 2019.
The Brazilian and Spanish authorities seize 57 of his properties.
Which is crazy.
For back taxes. I believe he owed something like 9 million or whatever euros in taxes, and they knocked it down to like 6.
He went to the Boris Becker School of paying taxes.
And we see in the report, they said that they found a bunch of Brazilian and Spanish passports. He's a dual citizen. He got a Spanish citizenship, I believe, in 2012 or something like that.
Yeah, he played for Barcelona.
But he has a bunch of passports that shouldn't be legal because he's stacking them on top of each other. So some of them say Ronaldo, some of them say Ronaldinho, and this is in the report.
Who do I want to be today?
He gets fined like 6 million euros. Him and his brother actually.
Yeah, his brother's like his manager.
His
right?
brother's like his manager, and they end up not paying the fines. So like literally they're just like, yeah, we're not paying that. So their passports end up getting suspended because before this they're legal to travel and all that because they understand he's a huge star. This is how he makes his shit. He just flat out does not pay any of his fines. They suspend his passports. He's going to Paraguay to do some sort of sponsorship deal or something like that.
Yeah, it was like for needy kids or something. Yeah.
And the Paraguay authorities stopped him and they were like, this is a fake passport. And he was just like, oh, okay.
I am 12.
Yes. It was interesting because his manager, his brother, was trying to get him off of this charge. And he came out and he said that he was illiterate. Like he literally said he was just like, yeah, Ronaldinho doesn't know how to read. He didn't know that this was wrong. He was like trying to take all of the blame. And some people coming out afterwards were just like, no, he could read, but he was kind of like a slow.
I mean, do you know how fines work, Ronaldinho?
Well, and he ends up going to a prison in Paraguay for a couple of months.
He plays soccer there.
Plays
like,
futsal.
Longest yard.
His team wins, and they end up letting him out and they fined him like €250,000. So he has a shit ton of legal problems right now, and they're all just kind of silly. If you know what I mean.
Like, they're not depressing or like sad. I mean, it's sad that he's in legal trouble, but it's not like, he stabbed someone.
Well, it's back taxes and fake passports.
So like white people crimes.
Yes.
Like,
but for me, he'll always be remembered as the toothy grin who was the best player from 2004 to 2006. I mean, the stuff he did in Barcelona, and what people were saying was like, you like the Barcelona from 2010 to 2000 and whatever, 18. Ronaldinho was pretty much the guy who restarted that engine.
Exactly. Yeah. Tostao had a nice quote about him. He said, "The dribbling skills of Rivellino, the vision of Gerson, the spirit and happiness of Garrincha," and just like on and on of all these Brazilian great players, like of how he just embodied all of it with his skill. So, yeah. Ronaldinho.
Yeah, great player.